The rain pounded Ouagadougou relentlessly, turning the red earth into rivers of mud. Streetlights sputtered, their dim glow painting the city in shades of unease. Inside the presidential palace, Ibrahim Traoré, 34, stood by a cracked window, a chipped mug of tea warming his calloused fingers. His broad frame, forged by years of battle in dusty fields, seemed out of place in the palace's faded grandeur. No suit could mask the soldier in him, his posture rigid, his jaw tight, as if bracing for a blow. A sharp knock at the door cut through the storm's roar. A drenched, shivering courier stumbled in and shoved a sodden folder into Traoré's hands. "They're coming, sir," he rasped, his voice nearly drowned by the rain's relentless drumbeat. Traoré ripped open the folder, his pulse racing. The pages revealed a chilling conspiracy. A French mining conglomerate, backed by American power, scheming to plunder Burkina Faso. Uranium mines would be looted, rebels armed with foreign gold, and a puppet regime installed to replace him. The final line burned into his mind. Project X, eliminate Traoré by December. The rain's rhythm grew ominous, each drop like the tick of a clock running out. Traoré's fingers clenched the folder, crumpling its pages. He staggered back, the mug crashing to the floor, tea spilling like blood across the tiles, mirroring the dread pooling in his chest. Outside, the city pulsed with life. Vendors huddled under tarps, motorbikes skidded through the mud, and the air carried the scent of wet earth and defiance. Traoré's mind raced as he pictured the Burkina Faso flag, its star shining boldly against the storm's gloom, a symbol of an unbowed people. Yet symbols couldn't stop bullets. He walked to his desk, the folder heavy in his hand. A lone lamp cast jagged shadows, reflecting the doubt gnawing at him. He reread the scrawled words, "Eliminate Traoré." Once a fortress, the palace now felt like a cage. He could summon his advisors or rally his guards, but who could he trust? The courier had disappeared into the night, leaving a trail of questions. Traoré's lips tightened into a thin line. He refused to wait and see. Clenching the folder in his fist, its edges biting his skin, he wondered, was this the truth or a trap to drag him into ruin? Years ago, Ibrahim Traoré was no president, merely a captain, his boots caked with Burkina Faso's dust as he dodged bullets in a 2020 ambush. The screams of fallen comrades still haunted his dreams, their blood staining the Sahel's sands. Those losses had forged him, tough as baobab bark, yet quiet, his words measured, each carrying the weight of a man who'd seen too much. By 2022, a coup had propelled him to power, making him Africa's youngest leader, sworn to protect his nation from foreign chains. In the palace's dimly lit hall, Traoré paced, his boots echoing on chipped tiles. The folder's warning gnawed at his mind, a threat poised to unravel everything. He faced his inner circle, Adama, 40, his sharp-witted advisor, betrayed by a nervous tick in his left hand. Fatimata, 32, a major whose scarred cheek and piercing silence spoke louder than words. Beyond the gates, thousands chanted his name, their voices rising above the downpour. Drums beat defiantly, echoing the snap of the Burkina Faso flag, green, red, gold in the wind. The West's hold grew stronger, their aid laced with conditions, their media branding Traoré a reckless upstart. He paused, his hand brushing the desk where the folder rested. The crowd's chants filled the air, a reminder of his purpose. He pictured the baobab trees of his childhood, their roots deep and unyielding, anchoring his resolve. Like them, he would stand firm. Adama shifted, his left hand twitching nervously. "We must act, Ibrahim," he urged, his voice barely above a whisper. Fatimata nodded, her scar glinting under the lamplight. Traoré studied them, his gaze probing for signs of betrayal. Trust was fragile, easily broken. Memories of the 2020 ambush surged back. A traitor's whisper had cost lives. The folder's leak seemed too convenient, its timing too precise, stirring unease in his gut. Beyond the gates, the crowd roared, waving Burkina Faso flags, their green, red, and gold vivid against the storm-gray sky. Traoré's chest tightened, his people, their hopes resting on him. Yet the West's propaganda was relentless, their influence vast. He glanced at the flag's star, bold and unyielding, a symbol of resistance. But a chilling question lingered. Who among his allies would betray him first? The sun-scorched Ouagadougou, baking the red earth dry. In the presidential palace's war room, Ibrahim Traoré stood at the head of a worn table, the crumpled folder spread open. Its pages exposed a sinister scheme: illegal uranium mining, rebel funding, and a plan to oust him for a puppet regime. Adama gripped his pen, knuckles pale, while Fatimata's scarred cheek tightened as they pored over the documents. Tension hung heavy, as stifling as the heat outside. Traoré broke the silence, his voice firm as steel. "We'll expose this at the United Nations in 48 hours. His fingers grazed the brass ring in his pocket, a relic from a fallen comrade, grounding his resolve. Adama shifted, uneasy. "It's risky, Ibrahim." "Too many eyes," Fatimata nodded, her gaze unwavering. Traoré dismissed their doubts, his mind racing. Who had leaked the folder, an insider or a double agent? The door creaked open, and Aissata Diallo, 28, a fierce journalist who'd once called Traoré a tyrant, stepped inside. Her braids caught the fluorescent light, her notebook gripped like a weapon. "I have something you need," she said, her voice low, sliding a USB drive across the table. "Proof, but it comes at a price." Traoré's pulse raced. She'd condemned his regime, yet now offered aid, or was it a trap? In the distance, drums pulsed, a faint echo of the people's defiance. The Burkina Faso flag drooped in the heat, its star a silent defiance. Traoré's fingers gripped the brass ring as he met Aissata's stare, probing for deceit. She didn't waver. "Play it," he ordered, nodding at the USB. Aissata's lips curled slightly, her eyes guarding secrets. Was she an ally or leading him into a trap? In a sleek Paris office, Pierre Dubois, 50, CEO of a French mining empire, reclined in a leather chair, a glass of cognac in hand. His silver hair gleamed, but his smile was chilling. Burkina Faso, rich with uranium, was his target, and Traoré, a peasant-turned-president, his obstacle. Dubois swirled his drink, his voice ice-cold as he spoke into a secure phone. "Silence him before New York." In Ouagadougou, his shadowy contact murmured assent. Dubois's plan was ruthless: smear Traoré with fabricated stories, arm rebels to unleash chaos, and install a puppet regime. The West would praise it as stability. He studied a map on his desk, Burkina Faso pierced with red pins, each a wound in his vision of conquest. "Africa's ours," he muttered, his arrogance sharp as a blade forged by centuries of domination. Back in Ouagadougou, Traoré studied Aissata's USB. The recording crackled, Dubois's unmistakable voice boasting of breaking Burkina Faso. Traoré's fist clenched on the desk, the brass ring pressing against his palm. Aissata watched, gripping her notebook. "There's more," she said sharply, "but you must move quickly." Dubois's influence stretched far, his spies lurking everywhere. Traoré glanced at the flag on the wall, its colors blazing in the lamplight. Dubois's words haunted him. He'll never reach the UN. Who was the traitor leaking his plans? Night enveloped Ouagadougou, the city's rhythm fading under a starless sky. Alone in the palace, Traoré sat, the USB's revelations weighing on him. Dubois's voice had confirmed the folder's truth, but the leaker's identity remained elusive. He rubbed the brass ring, its worn edges anchoring him in the silence. Outside, the drums had quieted, replaced by the soft hum of cicadas. Adama knocked, his silhouette stark in the doorway. "You're pushing too far, Ibrahim," he said, his voice taut. "The UN speech is a death wish." His left fist twitched violently. Traoré watched him, unease tightening his gut. Adama had been loyal since their army days, but loyalty could fracture under strain. "I won't hide," Traoré said firmly, rising as the flag's star gleamed behind him. Adama's eyes flicked away, his fist still trembling. "You're risking our lives," he muttered, then slipped out. Traoré's chest constricted, suspicion taking root. He recalled a moment from the 2020 ambush. A traitor's whisper had cost lives. Was history repeating? Later, Traoré spotted Adama in the courtyard, whispering into a phone. "I'll handle it," Adama said, then melted into the shadows. Traoré's pulse raced. Though the city slept, danger loomed. A lone drumbeat echoed outside, a faint call to resist. Was Adama concealing a dagger behind his loyalty? The sun blazed over Ouagadougou's tarmac, heat shimmering off the runway like a mirage. Ibrahim Traoré, 34, strode toward a private jet, Assada's USB secured in his jacket. His brass ring rested in his pocket, a quiet anchor. Above the terminal, the Burkina Faso flag fluttered, its colors bold against the fiery sky. Beyond the fence, crowds roared, their shouts drowning the jet's whine, drums thundering a fierce farewell. Traoré's chest swelled. He bore the weight of their hopes. A blast ripped through the hangar, a fireball erupting yards away. Shrapnel clattered across the tarmac as Traoré dove behind a crate, his pulse pounding. Guards scrambled, shouting, as the crowd's cheers turned to screams. Fatimata emerged, her scar vivid in the sunlight, barking orders. "Sabotage," she shouted, pulling Traoré to his feet. The jet remained intact, but the warning was unmistakable. Someone wanted him dead. Aboard the jet, Traoré's thoughts raced. The USB held Dubois's confession, evidence to unmask the conspiracy at the UN. But who had rigged the blast? A traitor among his ranks. He glanced at Fatimata, her face unreadable, then out the window. Ouagadougou dwindled below, its red earth a distant memory. In New York, the media labeled him a madman, their headlines vicious. The echo of drums lingered, urging him to fight. Then his phone buzzed with a chilling text. "They know you're coming." Who had betrayed his route? New York's skyline gleamed, its stark brilliance a sharp contrast to Ouagadougou's warmth. In a safe house, Traoré sat across from Assada, the USB between them. Her braids were tightly pulled, her pen tapping restlessly in an open notebook. "I wasn't always your enemy," she said sharply. She confessed she'd once worked for Dubois, feeding him intel, until his greed repulsed her. Stealing the USB, she'd risked everything to atone. Traoré's eyes narrowed, his mind racing to gauge her sincerity. Traoré's grip tightened on his chair, the brass ring a steady weight in his pocket. Assada's words felt true, yet doubt lingered. "Why now?" he asked, his voice low. She slid a list across the table, African nations targeted by Dubois's schemes. "Burkina Faso's just the beginning," she said. "I want him stopped." They crafted his UN speech, blending Dubois's recording with the folder's evidence. But a threat loomed. Outside, a shadow stirred, a man in a dark coat, watching. Assada froze, her pen stilled. "One of Dubois's," she whispered, pulling Traoré to a corner. The cramped safehouse reeked of stale coffee and fear, its walls closing in. Traoré's heartbeat throbbed. He pictured the baobab trees of home, their roots defying drought. Like them, he'd endure. Assada's gaze met his, fierce but fragile. They had hours to prepare, but the hunter was close. Outside, a distant siren wailed, a faint echo of Ouagadougou's drums. Would they outrun the killer closing in? The safe house seemed to close in around Traoré as he dialed Adama's number. The line crackled, Adama's voice strained with fear. "Ibrahim, you're risking too much," he stammered. He confessed he'd leaked Traoré's plans to Dubois, not for greed, but out of desperation. His wife and children held hostage, their lives the price of his silence. Traoré's jaw tightened, the sting of betrayal sharp. "Why, brother?" Traoré asked, his voice raw. The brass ring weighed heavily in his pocket, a symbol of loyalty now tarnished. Adama's plea crackled through static. "Forgive me." The call ended, leaving a silence heavier than the New York night. Traoré's grip on the phone loosened. The 2020 ambush flashed in his mind. A traitor's whisper had cost lives, and Adama had been his shield. Now, he was a fracture in Traoré's defenses. Assada closed her notebook, her gaze steady. "You can't save him," she said bluntly. Traoré's jaw clenched, He wouldn't let Dubois triumph this way. The UN speech was his weapon, the truth his shield. Outside, New York thrummed, oblivious to his battle. In his mind, the Burkina Faso flag stood tall, its star unwavering, yet Adama's betrayal stung deeply. Traoré paced, the floor creaking beneath his boots. Assada's list of targeted nations opened before him, a map of greed. He tried to focus, but one question lingered. Who else had turned against him? Dawn bathed New York, casting golden light on the UN building. Traoré stood at its gates, the USB and folder secure in his briefcase, the brass ring a quiet anchor. He'd anticipated Adama's betrayal, deliberately feeding him false intel to mislead Dubois, a calculated move to gain time. The hangar blast and leaked route were part of his gambit to expose the traitor. Inside, delegates whispered, their gazes skeptical. Traoré's boots rang on the marble floor, each step a rebuke to the media's lies. Assada walked beside him, her notebook replaced by a recorder to capture his words. In his mind, the baobab tree stood tall, its roots unyielding, while Burkina Faso's drums echoed, urging him on. He straightened his tie, the flag's colors burning in his thoughts. Dubois's spies might be watching, but the folder's evidence, paired with the USB, could sway the world. The delegates' cold faces betrayed doubt. Africa's pleas rarely stirred them. Traoré gripped his briefcase tightly, his resolve unwavering. As he reached the podium, the hall fell still. He set the briefcase down, the weight of the continent on his shoulders. Would the world hear him, or would Dubois's shadow silence the truth? The United Nations General Assembly Hall hummed with hushed voices, a crowd of suits casting skeptical glances. Ibrahim Traoré, 34, approached the podium, his boots quiet on the polished floor. The Burkina Faso flag's colors, green for hope, red for sacrifice, gold for stolen wealth, flashed in his mind. His briefcase lay open, the USB and folder poised, the brass ring a quiet anchor in his pocket. Assada, in the press gallery, held her recorder, her braids glinting under the lights. The world watched, but doubt loomed. Africa's voice rarely pierced the silence. Traoré gripped the podium, his heartbeat steady. You call us poor, he began, his voice measured, but you steal our wealth. The hall fell silent, delegates leaning forward. He inserted the USB, and Dubois's voice echoed. Burkina Faso will break, and will take its riches. Gasps spread. Traoré presented the folder's evidence: uranium theft, rebel funding, a scheme to crush his nation. His words cut like blades, sharpened by years of loss. You offer aid with one hand and chains with the other. No more, he declared, resolute. Traoré paused, envisioning Ouagadougou's red earth and unyielding baobab trees. Africa doesn't kneel, he proclaimed, his voice rising. The hall erupted, some delegates clapped, others sat frozen, faces pale. Western envoys shifted, their unease betraying guilt. Assada's recorder caught every word, her lips curling with quiet pride. Across Burkina Faso, screens glowed in markets and villages, crowds roaring as drums thundered, flags waving like a tide. Traoré's speech swept online, AfricaRises trending across global platforms. His final words, "We stand," became a global rallying cry, echoed from Lagos to Chicago. But as he stepped down, his pulse quickened. Dubois's empire was vast, his reach long. The evidence was public, but power didn't yield easily. Traoré glanced at Assada, her nod a spark of alliance. The baobab's roots in his mind held firm, but the fight wasn't over. Would Dubois let this blow go unanswered? Ouagadougou burst with celebration as Traoré's plane landed. The red earth gleamed under the sun, alive with thousands of voices. Drums beat fiercely, flags, green, red, gold, fluttering in a sea of defiance. Traoré stepped onto the tarmac, his boots firm, the brass ring a warm anchor in his pocket. Assada followed, recorder in hand, her braids swaying as she surveyed the crowd. The people chanted his name, their pride a bulwark against global scorn. News of the speech swept the globe. AfricaRises trended worldwide, shared by students in Harlem, activists in Nairobi, and dreamers in Accra. Du Bois's empire faltered, French authorities opened investigations, his stocks crashed, his name vilified online. Yet Traoré remained cautious. Power like Du Bois's didn't collapse, it regrouped. He gripped Assata's shoulder briefly, firmly. "This is only the beginning," he said, his voice low. She nodded, her expression keen, a fighter renewed. At the palace, Fatimata greeted him, her scar softened by a rare smile. "They're listening now," she said, pointing to screens displaying global protests. Yet Traoré's resolve held firm. He thought of Adama, now in hiding, his betrayal a lingering wound. The folder and USB had thwarted one scheme, but others loomed. He stepped onto a balcony, the city stretching below, its pulse fierce. Drums resounded, a call to remain vigilant. Social media surged with Traoré's image, his silhouette at the UN podium, the flag bold behind him. Youth shared his words, "Africa doesn't kneel." In Burkina Faso, markets thrummed with talk of reform, of severing foreign ties. Traoré leaned on the balcony railing, the baobab tree in his mind towering, its branches a symbol of resilience. Yet danger loomed. Du Bois's allies remained ominously quiet. Assata joined him, her recorder off, her gaze sharp. "They'll strike back," she warned. Traoré nodded, his look fixed on the horizon. Would this victory hold, or was a darker fight coming? The sun rose over Ouagadougou, bathing the red earth in fiery light. Ibrahim Traoré, 34, stood beneath a towering baobab tree, its gnarled branches a symbol of endurance. The air carried the scent of dust and hope, the Burkina Faso flag fluttering nearby, green for rebirth, red for courage, gold for a reclaimed future. His brass ring rested in his pocket, a silent vow to fallen comrades. The city thrummed with life, vendors sang, motorbikes roared, and drums beat steadily, heralding the nation's awakening. Traoré's UN speech had sparked transformation. Burkina Faso spurned foreign aid tied to control, building alliances with African neighbors. Markets thrived with local trade, schools embraced native languages, and miners reclaimed their land's wealth. Fatimata, her scar a mark of pride, led military reforms, her fierce smile guiding a new generation. Yet Traoré's thoughts dwelled on Adama, still in hiding, his betrayal a wound time couldn't heal. Traoré knelt, pressing his palm to the warm earth, its pulse fueling his fight for a people long oppressed by foreign powers. The crowd swelled, a vibrant wave, their flags fluttering boldly. A young girl with bright braids offered a woven bracelet, her smile radiant. "For you, President," she said. Traoré's throat tightened, the bracelet a cherished token beside his ring. Assata approached, her recorder replaced by a notebook, her gaze piercing. "They're watching," she said, glancing toward the unseen threat. The West's silence felt menacing, their power wounded but intact. Traoré stood, the baobab's shade cooling him, its roots a reminder of resilience. The drums intensified, a call to stay vigilant. Had the enemy retreated, or was this calm the prelude to a greater conflict? Twilight draped Ouagadougou, stars glittering overhead. Traoré stood on a makeshift stage, a camera broadcasting his words worldwide. The red earth pulsed beneath, the Burkina Faso flag soaring behind, its star a guiding light. His brass ring and the girl's bracelet lay in his pocket, symbols of his duty. Assata stood nearby, notebook open, her resolve fierce as she prepared to amplify his voice. The crowd's energy roared, drums pounding defiantly, their flags a vibrant mosaic of resistance. "Dignity isn't a gift," Traoré proclaimed, his voice resounding through the evening air. "It's our right." He called to the youth, from Harlem to Harare, urging them to rise, demand justice, and embrace Africa's strength. "We're not the world's charity case, we're its heartbeat." His grip on the microphone steady, each word kindled hope. The crowd roared, their passion a flame that illuminated the night, uniting voices across continents. Social media erupted with tag AfricaRises, Traoré's words resonating in videos, memes, and murals. In Chicago, a student spray-painted "We stand on a wall." In Lagos, a rapper wove his speech into a song. Asada's notebook overflowed with quotes, her pen racing to keep up. "You've ignited a movement," she said, her glance brief but steadfast, a partner in the fight. Traoré nodded, the baobab tree in his mind eternal, its branches reaching across borders. As the camera stopped, his gaze fixed on the horizon. The West's silence hung like a predator ready to strike. The drums faded, leaving a quiet challenge, yet Traoré's resolve remained unshaken. Beneath Burkina Faso's red earth, a nation had risen, its spirit unbreakable.